My name is David Hargrave, and throughout my life I've been involved in product development, advertising, and the visual arts. Like for instance, and I'm trying to design a business model that I can perform all three of those functions, hopefully with your company or another company that you might know of. For instance, I want to show you what my first invention was, is this. You know, it's a board, has skates on it. You know, some people eventually called this the skateboard. Well, when I was in 4th or 5th grade, I was making myself a scooter, and I needed to take a pair of my sister's skates and take them apart. I pounded them to a board, this very board, and I had another board coming up the side for the handle, which fell off because, you know, I was only in the 4th grade. I didn't know how to build really well. But then I was left with this board with these skates on it. And of course, being a kid, I stood up on it, and I could feel how dangerous and fun it would be. And so I immediately went across the street to my two best friends, Michael and David Sellers, because they were really wild and dangerous and fun athletes, people. And I showed them this board with the skates on it, and so they got on it. They went down the hill. And so we started building these for ourselves. And our little street, Northwest 47th Street in Seattle, is absolutely the birthplace of the skateboard. And I am absolutely the inventor, designer, and I first came up with it. And here it is. I'm 63 years old now, so you can do the math going back to my 4th or 5th grade year and see how soon after that, a couple, 3 years, they started kind of making those in different parts of the world. But they started on Northwest 47th Street. I designed them. I invented this. I invented the skateboard. Going on through my life, I had a lot of input into making jewelry and things like that. Well, I learned how to use a sewing machine, and I started making quilts out of different pieces of cloth and selling them in different places. But one thing I realized, I wanted to make something to keep people warm in the wintertime. So I went down to Pendleton, Oregon and bought a bunch of old blankets from the Pendleton, Oregon people. I designed this. I call it the quilted lapel. See, it has a little divot in it, looking through there. That goes around your neck. So that when it comes around the neck and in front, and the coat goes over that, you're the warmest guy in your little collection of winter people who are trying to tie those knots around their necks with their scarves. This is a whole different kind of thing. It's a new invention. It's a design. I'm a designer, so I design things. I did a lot of advertising with my jewelry company. I was the main advertiser, and so I like advertising. I have a great commercial that I'd like to get to the BMW company, that little car company, to bring in more of the women into the front seat, driver's seat of their cars. And we could talk about that if you decide to hire me. We can talk about how we can get that commercial idea over to BMW and make a big pile of money. Teacher now, and you know, yoga's a big deal. And I noticed that when I went into my local Trader Joe's store, they had these kind of funky, beautiful, colorful Trader Joe's bags. Okay, so I thought, well, that is nice, but what if I kind of repurposed the Trader Joe's bag and make it into a bag that people could keep their yoga mats in. You know, they just slide in and out. Put your yoga mat right in there. And it's just a repurposization of an existing thing that brings it forward into the future, and it's pretty elegant and beautiful. I did the same thing I realized that I was buying rice one time in this big bag, this 20-pound basmati rice bag. And so I thought, well, heck, I wonder if I could make that into a yoga mat bag. Here's what I came up with. I had another piece of beautiful material on the back to make it spacious enough to hold the mat. Put a handle on it. People buy them, wear them over their shoulders. A beautiful product. The surface, this is a industry, an idea in the gigantically exploding yoga industry that has just barely scratched. Only a few people around here have I even bothered to sell them to. And but here's a product that our company, that sounds good, doesn't it? Our company. Wouldn't you like to be involved in a company that goes forward in product development into the future and brings back and into the present things that people will want to buy? And what's really nice about these is they talk about the Himalaya mountains and water coming from the Himalaya mountains, and it's a very yogic kind of thing. And also on my list of designs, about 20 years ago I noticed there was a lacking in there could be a combination of tennis shoes and sandals into one cool kind of design. So what I did was I started taking my tennis shoes, my sports shoes, and I started redesigning them. I would cut out the tongue, start to cut out side spaces, and I come up with a tennis shoe sandal that is, I've been doing this for about 20 years. This was like, maybe 10 years before Keens came into play. And I was like 10 years ahead of them. So everything I do is a little bit ahead of time. I did a taller version, so it was like more like a Roman sandal. It's the only one I've done actually with the tall version of shoe. Same thing, cut out the tongue, make spaces in there. And the ones that they might call Air David, many people call them many different things, but people like them. And it gives you a cool, new looking design of things that people are normally dealing with these hot tennis shoes in the summertime, hot sports shoes. This is the coolest of the cool sports shoes that you can have. I say that in a country where people pray to their shoes, a lot of people are like praying to their Nikes and their Adidas, and this is kind of like a blasphemy. But it's a good blasphemy. It's a blast of fresh energy into the femi that we're all involved with. So that's another thing that shows how the creative imagination comes up with new things out of old situations. So I wanted you to see those two, the Air Davids. Oh, and I want also to say, on my Air products, I have the Air David hat, where you just go ahead and cut holes out of your hat like this. Have you ever seen anything like that before? No. Here it is. And on very, very hot days, okay, you might be a little bald, and if you're bald and you don't mind having beautiful tan lines on your head, you can wear these. And believe me, tan lines on a bald head looks great. You don't have to worry about it. But anyway, on hot days, put this in the water, get it wet. When you put it on your head, as the water evaporates and the spaces are open there, your head actually gets cool. So it's not just the shade, it's the evaporating water that cools your head when you're wearing one of my new designed hats. So consider these hats also as something our company can do, produce, and as an element of ideation that came out of the interplay of my mind with the universal imagination. Because I went down to the Disney Studios one time because I had invented a soap bubble that when the water evaporated off the bubble, it left a crystal sphere, so it didn't pop. And the companies in Chicago were trying to steal it from me, and all these things were going on because in some levels of the corporate world, I know it's dog eat dog, but on other levels of corporate world, it's you try to eat the other guy's dog, and you don't. It's not even dog eat dog. It's you try to get it because we always will. So anyway, what I learned from Walt Disney in those days is the men who worked for him since Walt was dead. When I went down there, I asked them, well, what's it like without having Walt around anymore here in the Disney studios? And these old men, they go, it's not the same. We could do things for Walt Disney that we couldn't do for ourselves because he had this kind of synergistic, they didn't use the word synergistic, but that's what it is, the synergistic ability to collect geniuses around him and not stifle their genius with his overlording abilities, but his genius was to collect geniuses and let them play out to fuller abilities than they knew they had. So with that being said, you can look up my website. If you want to see something that's, like I say, I've always done things that's slightly ahead of time. One of the things I'm doing that's slightly ahead of time now is my website called consciousness.com. And normal people can't spell consciousness, so I'll spell it for you. CONSCIOUSNESS.com. Now on my website there I have these beautiful cloud photographs that you'll see. And you'll see that level of the imagination that my mind is coming into, because imagination isn't in your mind is in imagination. My goal is easy. I just want people to become celestial consciousness. I want humanity to take the next step out of terrestrial consciousness into celestial consciousness. So anyway, and I got that all done. It's on my website, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. So now what I'm doing is coming back into product development. So anyway, that's what I'm doing, and that's what I can do for you. And you might want to call me. If you want to call a really cool phone number, it's 1-800-ANGELIC. That spells angelic. Yes, I got consciousness.com and 1-800-ANGELIC. Don't ask me how these things come to me. But if I'm working in your company, those kind of things will continue to come to me into your company and be an outflow of creative ideas. Well, how was it? Did you like that? You think you might be interested in having me working on your team?